You're listening to the Cricket Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cricket Podcast, where we are here to talk about the fourth test between England and India, maybe reminisce a little bit about the third test between England and India, and talk about some new plans afoot for the future of Test cricket. I'm Jack Hope. I am joined by Max Rowe-Brown. How you doing, Max? We never actually checked, Max, whether Ross was available for this. He said he might be, and we never followed up.
No.
So,
well, I think it got to the point in the day, didn't it, where we needed a podcast, and no news from Ross. So if you're here, Ross, join in on the chat.
yeah, why not? Drop us a message. And likewise, if you are hanging out in the live show on YouTube, make sure you click like and subscribe to begin with. We need to recoup some subscribers. It's quite a little bit of a tongue twister there. We got up to the 17,000 mark, and then England bowled India out for 170 odd, and now we're back down to the mid 1690s, 16,900 rather. So, you know, let's see what happens. I think I know what will need to happen in order for us to but in the meantime, do click that subscribe button, and similarly, if you're over on Spotify or Apple, make sure you click there. Head to the show notes, etc. Max, I know you did a podcast after the third test. We'll start with that. We'll do a little bit of third test action first.
Set the scene.
Yeah, exactly. With what is it now? It's about a week to wind down. It's exactly a week of wind from that third test. Do you have any other reflections? Some on-action reflections rather than in-action reflections, to quote Sean's reflective model.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm enjoying it. We do throw all sorts of things into this, don't we? Sometimes, but that's definitely a new one. So obviously we were talking mostly when Ross and I went over the result. We were talking mostly about what happened on the fourth day and the tactics and all of that side of things, but probably didn't really pick up as much on the bigger picture stuff. And I think for me, what came out of it was the needle between the two sides. Like, there was a bit of a hoo-ha, wasn't there, in terms of some people in the media saying, Siraj went too far, and he got fined for his send off to Ben Duckett and all the rest of it, and the histrionics around time wasting and Shubman Gill getting angry and Shubman Gill's massages and all that stuff. But I think the points that people have made since, and I think some of the players made actually during the game, is that you want a bit of that. You need some character. You need a reason to get behind your team and try and get a little bit angry and have a bit of fire. Especially bearing in mind the first couple of days, they were a bit painful, weren't they? England scoring England at scoring under 3.5 and over in the last 2-3 years of Test cricket is unheard of. So for that to have happened kind of gives you an indication of what the conditions were like, and that's the kind of cricket that resulted in. And if anything, it was that, those flash points, if you can even bother going as far as calling them that kind of brought the game to life, and it brought the series to life, I think, as well. It was all a bit nicey to start with, and it's more fun when Mohammad Siraj gets really angry and throws a tantrum. It's just always more enjoyable to watch that. So that's what came out of it for me, I think. Aside from it, being a really tense finish and a good game of cricket in the end, it was the fact. I think this was the point that marked the start of a little bit of energy and rivalry in the series that I think we were missing.
Yeah, I think that's maybe true. It was it's a little bit of a throwback maybe to a slightly different era of cricket, before probably the international mingling that has come off the back of the franchise circuit. If you think back, I don't know whether you kind of look back on this and the big moments stick out, or whether cricket just was a little bit more hostile between different nations back in the day, because it was a little bit more insular and it did maybe feel a little bit more like us v them. But I kind of agree with that. Watching it's like, there's the Alex Carey run out. Obviously, that caused a little bit of tension
Diplomatic
on the field.
incident.
Yeah, but even after that, the players weren't openly going at it. The Border Gavaskar Trophy in Australia before the last one, there was maybe a little bit of to and fro. Ashwin and Tim Payne, and Tim Payne asking Rishabh Pant if he was going to come around and do his babysitting and that sort of thing. But it wasn't, I don't think, quite as in your face as Shubman Gill and Zach Crawley at the end of day 3, or Brendan McCullum doing the give him some mouth gesture down to the England team when Washington Sundar walked into bat after he did that, infamous, or he gave that infamous interview. And actually, after the match, I don't know if you saw today, Harry Brook doing the media was saying that he actually quite enjoyed not being nice. It's fun not to be the nice guys anymore, I think was the quote taken from that interview. So, Max, do we expect that to continue? Will there be blood next time? I think that's the question that we need to go with before we talk about anything else from the third test.
I think it probably will have settled down a little bit, given it was a longer gap between this test and the previous one. Well, this one, I guess, the third one, and the next one, whatever. So it does feel like it's simmered down a bit, and that the stories have moved on to different things, selection issues, and that kind of stuff. So I think to start with, it'll probably be fine, but it won't take much, I think, for there to be something that flashes up again. It'll probably be something that Siraj says, and that's fine, because he's the guy. He's the cartoon. I think he's like the cartoon villain. But there is something about it that is fun when he gets riled up, and he's the kind of one who brings. I think he's the one that brings it out of India the most. And I think with Virat Kohli retiring, that is something that the side was missing. Someone in the chat has mentioned that Shubman Gill is trying really hard to be Kohli Jr. And I think I've sort of definitely got that vibe myself more in the last test. I think he started off being quite calm and hands off, and then you could see, I think someone had probably said, you need to be a bit more aggressive and get your team with you. I mean, I think they were saying that on the commentary, to be honest. He didn't quite fill the role as well as Kohli. It was a little bit crybaby toys out the pram, the way he went about it. But it's a learning process. He said he's willing to learn as captain. As part of that is how to put some more of aggression. I don't know if you call it aggression, but something, a little bit of intensity and pressure on the other side, just from a bit of energy in the field. So that's something that, India have improved on maybe over the series to make it a bit more exciting. But Siraj,
I think from the Gill point of view, I think he shouldn't try and be what Kohli is, because I think there are different styles of leadership, and Kohli's is very much his own, and to try and emulate that, I think would be a mistake for somebody who probably doesn't have the
natural fire
capacity. Yeah, the capacity to be like a 9 or a 10 for an entire
all the
day,
time.
which Kohli had. And Kohli could kind of hold it at that boiling point as well. I mean, Kohli wasn't like flying off the handle every little incident. He could remain kind of angry and fiery without crossing the proverbial line, and he was quite good at that. But if you look at other ways of going about it, I suppose there are like plenty of other well-trodden routes to being a good leader. I think most of them require the leader to lean into, to be a version of themselves, but only more so, if that makes sense. Shubman Gill in his resting state isn't somebody who's going to get angry about something, a perceived slight. I can imagine that Kohli in his resting state is exactly that sort of person. When he goes out on the cricket field, he takes that personality and he just dials it up a little bit. Whatever Shubman Gill is, and I don't know what he is, but like if we take some examples from other captains, Owen Morgan, I don't imagine he was the sort of person that flew off the handle in the changing room or on the drive to the game. He's probably fairly calm and considered, pretty studious, fairly level-headed. I doubt as level-headed as he sometimes was on the cricket field with England, where it was like, obviously he's putting a face on and there's a slight act to it. But by leaning into one of his sort of natural personality assets, he was able to bring people with him and convey that attitude on the field. Now, it's not like there's a continuum, right, between Owen Morgan and Virat Kohli. I'm just picking two examples that are sort of at different ends of the spectrum. You can be somewhere in the middle. Like, there's plenty of, Stokes is probably an example of that, to be honest. Somebody who, like, can, when he wants to, dial up the aggression, but generally speaking, yeah, exactly. Generally speaking, his attitude is that he sort of just wants to give it his best and have fun. Like, that's if you're thinking about what Stokes does on the cricket pitch, it's sort of giving his best and having fun. Like, you see him laughing a lot and stuff like that. And that's what that's what I think Gill should probably consider. I don't think this kind of wrestling heel turn.
No.
If we're going to do it from a wrestling perspective, and really that's what it all comes back to, it's cricket instead of professional wrestling. Shubman Gill is a face. He is a face. He is not a heel. Virat Kohli, he's a heel. Ben Duckett, heel. Siraj, heel. Bumrah, face. Like, you need to think about which of those two categories you are in, and whether you have the capacity to do the Stokes and kind of flip between the two. I would contend that Shubman Gill needs to think about his wrestling character persona. And Max, to round off this conversation on Gill, because I do have another theory on the third test. What wrestling persona should Shubman Gill adopt?
I'm afraid you've caught me, because I'm not a big wrestling guy, so it's tough. But
crying out loud, no one's a big wrestling guy when you're in your mid-30s, are they? Unless you, I don't know, live in a basement or something. But you can give it a go.
You got to be It'll be the Undertaker. Take England to their graves. Okay. That's the persona he should adopt. Grind them into the dust, because that's how they won the second test. They ground England into the dust. And
You think
what I was going to say on
Ruthless Terminator? I think that's the way he should go. The Ruthless Terminator.
Yeah, like that makes sense. What I was going to say about Shubman Gill is like I sort of agree with you in that him trying to emulate some personality that he isn't necessarily deep down is probably not the way to go. But as a leader in the theatre of sport, I think there's a level of intensity that you do have to bring with you and bring your side along. And I think in the first test or so. First test or two, we didn't see. It wasn't just like him not being aggressive. It was just all a little bit like everything was happening around him, and it doesn't necessarily have to be him that brings the aggression. He can just marshal his troops in a way, or try and get the best out of his players that are the heels, as you say. So there's a way of doing it, I think, and maybe trying to do what Kohli does directly is not the way forward. But it's nice to at least, see that there's an understanding that bringing a bit more energy and intensity out of the India side is better for the spectacle. It takes managing, doesn't it?
If you're thinking conductor of the orchestra, could he adopt a kind of persona similar to the now disgraced former CEO of World Wrestling, Vince McMahon? Is that an angle to go down?
Perhaps, Jack. Perhaps that is the future without the disgrace.
I'm better than you and I make all the decisions. Is that a leadership angle that could work?
If he carries on scoring double hundreds, yes.
Okay, right, there you go. I'd like to see Shubman Gill McMahon. I fucking never say that name right. Here's what I wanted to say about that test from my perspective, that I think has gone slightly undercovered over this series. It was another one of those ones where India seemed to win, or at least not lose, basically all the sessions until England played really well, or they played really badly and they lost. And I'm wondering, so I think, and actually this is how we sort of, the mainstream way of analysing Test cricket is that you sort of look at who won the session, and that sort of determines the, I guess, likely winner of the match. Otherwise, why would you bother doing that? Like, it's that's the That seems to be the yardstick. When you're on the broadcast, they'll colour it in one colour for England and colour it in the other colour for India and be like, there you go, that's roughly what's happened in this match. I think I'm going to introduce a new category of session outcome. I'm going to call it the beatdown. And I think that this is actually what determines test matches more often than not, especially when England are involved. The beatdown session. And so what I mean by this is that, like, rather than it being like, oh, you had the team 80 for 3 at lunch at the first day, that's a win for the bowling side. Like, that happens to England a lot. They're 80 for 3 at lunch on day one, or they go a whole session and the other team's 90 for 1 and you've lost that game. But also in test matches, England seem to have sessions where they score 150 for none and back themselves to victory, or they take 4 wickets for 60. And I'm going to throw it out there, Max, that perhaps we need to be thinking more about the beatdown session, and that perhaps like just generic session wins are irrelevant. What do you think to that?
Well, it's probably a fair comment, isn't it? When you think about a game of football, think about a 2-leg game of football, right? You could win the first one 5-0 and lose the second one 2-1. Doesn't matter. It was over at halftime because you won the first leg 5-0, and that's, I guess, like a very condensed version of what you're saying, right? Like, no, not all wins are created equal. Like, we're measuring sessions on a categorical basis. You won the session or you lost the session. Sometimes maybe it was close enough that you could say you drew the session, and you could very closely win 3 sessions 1-0, but you lose one session 5-0, you lost the game. That's I guess that's essentially the nub of it, isn't it? So,
yeah, I think that's it. I think what that also means, though, is that so like if you read around or you listen to podcasts or whatever, and I think this is particularly from the Indian punditry side, that lots of people are saying India have dominated most of the series, and I think that is an incorrect reading, basically, of what has actually happened in the matches, where India have piled up sort of a large number of marginal wins, and England have absolutely pounded them into submission on 3 or 4 occasions. Probably 5 occasions that I can think of, like the 2 batting collapses in the first test, and then Duckett blasting 150 in the chase. Like, they're catastrophes. If that happens to you once in a test match, there's a really good chance you're going to lose the game. And so India managed to do that 3 times, and it's only because they were sort of marginally ahead in all the others that they, there was a little bit of nerves when England were completing that chase. The second test, actually, I think it was sort of more the opposite. Like,
England got pummeled.
England got pummeled in every session, or like not in every session, but England didn't have that fight back. And then in this particular test, I think sort of a reasonably similar thing happened. Like, India marginally ahead after England batted, marginally ahead after marginally winning from a batting point of view, ended up on 387 all out somehow. Marginally ahead in their bowling in the second innings, and then in 2 sessions were absolutely beaten to fuck, basically. And so what I'm asking here, Max, that's the technical term, is from an India perspective, like, is there something that they can learn from the second test to try and avoid or reverse some of the beatdown sessions that England have managed to dish out to them in the other tests? Because it's not, I think if you go back to the formula of we'll just try and win every session, we'll try and grind out 1-0s, and then like blow it by losing 5-0 in the in what you're 1-0 up after 4, you're 4-0 up after 4 sessions, and then in the 5th session you concede 5 goals. That doesn't really work because you brought football into it, but that's not how football works. But it kind of, if we were doing a points-based system,
well,
that's sort of
it's just
is it
saying
that England can avoid?
Yeah, well, that's it, right? A win is a session win is on a continuum. It's not just a case of whether you won it or you lost it. I think they've probably got a bit more agency over what they do with the bat than with the ball, because if you think about the way England can deliver a beatdown, as you put it, it is quite often in the sense that they take a session and they go at 5 and over and don't lose a wicket, and they've taken the game further away from you in that one session than would normally be expected in a game of Test cricket. I'm thinking it's in the game that England lost, but when Jamie Smith, because England had lost the plot with the bat, which is the other thing that can happen when you play the way England do. But after that, Harry Brook and Jamie Smith went ballistic, and it wasn't enough to get England back into the game, but it was the kind of thing that England are able to do with the bat. But that, in that case, was too late because Shubman Gill decided that he was just going to floor England. And I think that's probably the area that India maybe need to think about the most in terms of when they are on top, putting the foot on the gas, not just maintaining the perceived dominance that they have. I think it's just about being a bit more ruthless, isn't it? Because that was what won them that first test. They were on top, and Shubman Gill went ham, and England had no answer to that. But on the other occasions where India have been on top, they've done something to let England back into the game, and I think that's where, probably where they can improve.
I think it runs a bit deeper than that. I'm not exactly sure whether I've got the answer, but I think I think it's symptomatic of how England play, and I think it's tricking people. I think if you were India after the 3 matches so far, and I wouldn't actually be surprised if we see this in the 4th test, and we can move on to the preview now, and this is a kind of a good segue. Like, if you are India, I can see why you'd think you can just do the same thing again and expect to win. And you're probably not a million miles off, right? The talent between the two teams is fairly thin. The conditions will almost certainly have a factor. If you get to bowl at the right time at Old Trafford, it could be curtains for the opposition. That happens. But I think, like, over these 2 tests, I'd be surprised if India were able to win both, playing the way that they have in the first 3 matches of the series, even though they probably perceive that they have played the better cricket, because the way England play is so volatile that I don't think you're ever really far away from them doing something kind of nuts. And I think that applies to sort of both sides of the ball. Like, we see it a bit more with the bat when, someone hits loads of sixes or whatever. But in the 4 innings of this, of the 6 innings in this test series, 4 times England have got on top and just killed India. And a couple of them, there's a little bit of artistic license to that, right? A couple of them have happened when India have got lots of runs on the board, but the point remains that England have stopped India going from 450 to 550 in the first test by taking 7 wickets for no runs, and then they did that again. And then in this test, in the 3rd test that we were just talking about, they stopped India getting away with it in the first innings by taking a bunch of wickets for really not that many runs. And then in the second innings, I know Jadeja dragged it out, and I've got my own thoughts on that, and people who are in the Discord will have seen me talk about it at length. I think Jadeja batted like an idiot. I think that... Right, yeah. Look, I've got one more thing to say on this, and then we will move on to the 4th test. But I think, basically, England have managed to dish it out to India 4 times with the ball. It's not just about the bat. They take loads of wickets all in a row, and so you feel like you're quite a long way ahead.
No, I mean, England with the ball is the flip side of India with the bat, isn't it? And India not being relentless enough to push on. So, I mean, I guess you can put it in that way, and that is fair, because England do have agency with the ball, and it would be unfair to take all of that away from England of being able to blow the tail away. But equally, India, when they were on top, didn't get themselves far enough ahead that England blowing away the tail wouldn't make any difference, because they know that they've got nothing from 9, 10, 11.
I think it's actually partly a conditions thing that England, and it's a home team thing in this test series. If this was played in a neutral setting, I think India would be the favourites. But I think in English conditions, when England find the ball to their liking and the conditions to their liking, the pitch to their liking, they are capable of blowing away India. And I don't think the exact same is necessarily true all the time for India, even with Bumrah in the team. Like, Akashdeep did it at Edgbaston, because he's actually quite an English style bowler, I'd say.
Mm.
I don't know whether, particularly with how they're like basically taking reverse swing out the ball by playing with an orange on the lushest outfields of all time. I don't even know whether Bumrah has got the capacity, apart from maybe right on early with the new ball, to take wickets in such a volume as England have managed. So that's my theory on that. And then on Jadeja, because I mentioned it, like I didn't understand that plan, batting so slowly, because it basically meant, like, for India to win, Bumrah and Siraj needed to face more balls than they have ever faced in a Test match ever before. And like, I know it was an orange on a wet outfield or whatever, and so it was hard to like hit sixes or fours, and it was relatively easier to just dead bat it. But those two are shit at batting. Like, you are asking them, if you're scoring at that rate, you are asking them to survive between them basically 20 overs. And the chances of that happening are like 1 in 100. The chances of Jadeja like getting a few out the middle are probably more like 1 in 20, 1 in 10. And that's so clearly the way to go. And so everyone was doing this, oh, what an amazing vigil, what a fighter and stuff. And it was like, no, mate, you've just left the fucking door open. Like, England they're gonna take those wickets eventually. It's actually really in the extreme, the amount of time it actually did take England to take those wickets. It's actually really surprising that someone didn't hit a catch to short leg or edge one, or like the LBW that actually was to Jadeja wasn't like fractionally more in line. That didn't happen sooner. That covers up quite a lot of poor strategy from my point of view. Max, we've got to talk about the fourth test, because that's actually what the point of this episode is.
Before we get there, you know why Jadeja bats like that, don't you? You know what it is. Because he's Dhoni. Every time he goes out to bat for CSK to get to the winning runs, he gets more of a cheer from the crowd when he's out because Dhoni's in next than he does from actually winning the game. Like, that's going to destroy you mentally as a human being.
I thought it was the other angle. I thought like he was like literally doing a Dhoni and taking it deep.
Oh right, yeah. That's the other angle.
Yeah, but I was just like, it's so obviously the wrong strategy here. You cannot rely on Siraj and Bumrah to face 150 balls in a Test match from day 5.
And like, props to them for doing it as well, because
they gave it a go.
They did a really good effort.
So I think Siraj faced like 15 or 20 more balls than he ever faced in a single innings in a Test match before. Bumrah basically tied his record. They're freak occurrences. Anyway, Max, the fourth Test. Where do we want to start with that? Do you want to do a preview, summary, a thing?
Yes, well, all the big news for the fourth Test preview it's been centered around India, hasn't it? And India's injury issues. So I guess the best thing to do is to go through those before we think about what might happen and what the teams look like. If you agree.
Yeah, let's do India first. England have named their 11, so it's a little bit easier for us to do that, and it'll be mainly like Isley and Dawson good, I guess. Yeah. But let's do India.
All right, yes. So obviously the recent news, and we've got a little bit more clarity now, which is helpful in time for doing a pod, because at about 11 o'clock this morning, I didn't have a clue what was going on. But essentially, the news is Arshdeep Singh out at the fourth Test. Nitish Kumar Reddy has gone home. His knee's busted, so he's out of the rest of the series. Akashdeep has a groin niggle. We don't know whether he's going to be available or not, but he did bowl a bit in training today, so they're hoping, I think, waiting to see what the position is on Akashdeep. And Rishabh Pant kept in training today as well, so there was discussions around whether Dhruv Jurel was going to be playing as a keeper and Pant as a batter solely, but it does seem like Rishabh Pant is probably going to be able to take the gloves on Thursday as well, so we have a little bit more certainty around India. But what we do know is that NKR is out, Arshdeep Singh is out, and Anshul Kamboj has been called up as a replacement and flown in to join the India squad. So the question there is what their team looks like, and I suppose there's a few different options, but now we know that Pant can keep and bat. That solves one issue. And word on the street, Jack, is that Sai Dawson will be back in to replace NKR. So obviously more concern around the batting element of Nitish's game than the bowling. So Sai back in the side, maybe at 3, maybe at 6, depends what they want to do. Karen there. So then it comes to the questions of who's going to come in to replace Akashdeep if he's not available, and what do they do about the number 8 position?
Right. What do you mean the number 8 position? Presumably,
Right.
unless
So
I'm
Jaiswal,
right.
King Legend, Karen
Yeah.
Nair, Shubman Gill, Rishabh Pant,
Yeah.
Saisa Dawson, Jadeja, and then you are either going Washington Sundar and 3 seamers, or you're picking a 4th seamer and
That is
losing a bit on
100%
the
what they're
pattern.
doing.
Yeah,
They're putting their Washington Sundar isn't going to be dropped. Like that's a definite. Jasprit Bumrah, they're backed into a corner, so he's definitely
has to
playing.
play.
Siraj similarly backed into a corner, and this is in terms of the series situation plus the injuries. Both of them have to play, and then I guess it's Cambodge. Like, I mean, like, unless they're going to take the split decision here is you go with Shardul Thakur as your like actual first change bowler, which seems bonkers. Like, surely, I know it would be his debut and stuff, but he's fairly well regarded on the domestic circuit. Like, surely Anshul Kamboj is going to bring you more with the ball than Shardul Thakur, even if he's got a little bit of jet lag.
You can't play Shuttle Tucker. He was absolutely terrible in the game he played. You surely can't play him. But I think the question is, and Tammy in the chat suggested that reports are that it will be Cambodge will come in about 8 because he is regarded as an all-rounder of sorts, or at least his batting is regarded, and he hit an unbeaten 50 against the Lions in the warm-ups. And then Kuldeep will come in at 9, which then still leaves you, well, you've got a better spinner than Washington Sundar, but then you are still down to the 3 seamers, one of whom you need to manage because it's Jasprit Bumrah, one of whom has played 3 tests in a row and bowled a ton, and one of whom is on debut. So that, I mean, it would be a bold call from India to go down that route. And it's why I think that we won't see them name their side until the very, very last minute, partly because of Akashdeep's fitness. Well, even then, I don't know. I wouldn't risk it, bearing in mind you need to go to a 5th test and you might not be able to use Bumrah and the rest of it. But also just the state of the pitch, right? There's a bit of rain around in theory, so a wrist spinner might not come into it as much. And I mean, who knows what the pitch is going to be like? England have done a little bit of weird stuff. Like, they've been a bit flat and dry in places, in which case Kuldeep might be an option. But also, equally, they might roll out a green seamer because they think India are going to pick 3 seamers and it would be a mistake. So, or they might make the boundaries 50 metres long like they did at Edgbaston.
Look, here's what I think they'll do. I think they'll keep the team exactly the same, but Cambodge will come in for Akashdeep and Dawson will bat for Nitish Kumar Reddy. And that's enough bowling, and it's fine. I think there is a strong argument to pick Kuldeep over Washington because I think he probably is a better bowler overall, and I think at number 8, the run difference isn't that much. I know India. I think that basically Kuldeep could probably do an okay job. Like, he wouldn't be a good number 8. Washington is a very, very good number 8, but at that point in the innings, like, really India's game plan has got to be like the other 7 really, really good players will have got some runs on the board. So we just need somebody to hold up an end for a little bit while they try and add an extra 50. And that's a completely reasonable thing to do. What I would say, though, is that Washington has actually bowled so well in the series that I think it will be that cricket thing you get where, even though it might be better for the team to pick someone who is a more versatile, more usable, more effective bowler, probably in all conditions, you don't want to punish a guy who has actually performed. And so I think they'll pick Washington. And they might also, I don't really know how much this sort of like pseudo psychology stuff comes into it. They might also want to pick him because England singled him out a little bit for some treatment, as it were, at the Lord's Test. They might want to pick a point that they want to back their man. They might not want to back down on that front. I don't know whether that fact comes into team thinking at all. I imagine on some occasions it does, and on some occasions they literally don't care. But I think the former point that he's actually played pretty well will make a difference.
Yeah, it'd probably be quite harsh to drop him.
Yeah, it probably would be. I think it'd still probably be a good decision. Like,
yeah, but we were in the camp of they shouldn't have picked him in the first place. So I guess there's that.
I have seen rumours, and I think this would be absolute madness. By the way,
Yeah.
I have seen rumours that they're thinking about putting him up at like 6 or at 3.
Washi at 3, yeah.
And then you get like all of the toys. I think that is frankly massively overstating, or you're massively overestimating the batting ability of Washington Sundar if you think he can bat in the top 6 away from home in a test match. Like there's not really anything he's done, I would say, that suggests that. Now, he has played good innings in Test cricket. They pretty much all come down the order. He, from a kind of bigger picture point of view across the series, has done okay with the bat. He's done nothing that suggests, though, that he would be suited to batting at 3 or at 6. He scored, I think, 75 runs and been out 3 times. Like, he's basically a bit better than Zach Crawley. And if Zach Crawley was available to India, they wouldn't be thinking, let's bring him in at number 3 on number 6. Like, it's not, maybe they put him in, maybe he scores a century, but like I think it would be a complete freak innings if he were to pull off something like that. Like I think his game is probably fairly well suited to batting down the order, playing a few shots when the ball's a little bit older, and I think he's pretty good at that. And if his bowling, can stand up, then fine, pick him for that reason. But he's not a test match number 6, and he's not a test match number 3, as much as people love the idea of that. That's what I'd say. So where are we with that on India? Like, have we actually, if we were the selection panel, what have we achieved?
Well,
nothing.
If we go nothing, yeah, we're very confused, which is exactly what I expect the India selection panel will be like. Well, I think you're definitely taking us down the route, Jack, of 3 seamers and 2 spinners. Which, if you're going to do it anywhere in England, Old Trafford's probably the place you're going to get away with it the most. But yeah, I guess my concern with that, if I were arguing against you on the India selection panel, is Nitish bowled 22 overs in that 3rd test. Those overs have got to be shared around. You can't be bowling Bumrah into the dirt, and
they'll try. They will try.
Well, so the other thing, right? Because obviously you have to play Bumrah. If they get back into it and they manage to win the test in Old Trafford, and they're 2-2 going into the Oval, are they going to want to keep the option open of flogging that horse one more time with Jasprit Bumrah? In which case, can you go with 3 seamers? I mean, it's a little bit hedging your bets, isn't it? It's like do we go fall out in this one and then leave ourselves a little bit undercooked for the last test match? Or do we go into it giving ourselves an option of being able to play our talisman in that last game and have a 4th seamer to take some of the weight off? I suppose that's the question, I think, maybe that they need to answer in terms of whether or not to go with 3 or 4 seamers. But I suppose you have to think about how useful that 4th seamer is going to be. I mean, it would either be
not useful.
Or Prashad Krishna, and he's averaging 55 in this series.
Forgot he was even available.
So I think I probably agree with you, Jack. I think 3 seamers, and just take up the slack with the other spinners, because you're going to get as much out of them as you would your 4th seamer anyway, and you just end up bowling a bit more spin in that first innings than you might otherwise. But realistically, look at what England do against spin. Like, it's a tactic that you can employ. You could bowl spin against Ben Stokes all day long, and you'll probably be fine at the moment. Like, there's probably sense in doing that. So I think that's probably where we'll go. So we're saying Jadeja, you're saying Washington Sundar, Bumrah Siraj, Kamboj. Well, Kamboj will bat.
That's what I think they'll do. I wouldn't necessarily pick that team. Like, I'm not yeah, I'm still not super stoked on Washington Sundar. I think there's quite a lot to prove there. I think I don't know. I think without Akashdeep, India have to basically play Bumrah in this test as well. Like I think
Yeah.
they Siraj has had a good series, and Bumrah has had a good series, and Akashdeep has had a good series in one test. And I think you definitely need two of them to stand a chance. Campbell's just a little bit of an unknown entity, isn't he? Maybe he's perfect bowler for English conditions, but we're kind of not sure on that, are we? So if we're based on what we do know, I think you have to play two of those guys. And that's probably the most obvious point anyone's ever made about India. Should we do England before we do? Just remind people to click like and subscribe if they're watching on YouTube. We've had some really good comments in the live chat, so I've been enjoying reading those. Keep them coming in. Who do you think is going to win the fourth test? Let us know. Drop us a comment if you're watching it later. Let us know in the chat if you're watching it live. And if you are on Spotify or Apple, make sure you're clicking that subscribe button. Max, I think we should do more wagers on this podcast.
Yeah.
Not like proper finance, but I think we like the Ross Sunrisers shirt bet was probably the most jeopardy we've ever seen on the podcast.
It was good content.
What
as well.
we're known for. Yeah, I think we need more wagers. So,
do you remember? Do you remember back in the days, the halcyon days of our once glorious fantasy football podcast from yesteryear, Jack? Where I think you and I did a wager on a head-to-head fantasy football game, and the loser, which was me, ate a whole habanero as a forfeit. That was fun. Maybe something like that, but I don't want to eat another habanero. It's painful.
Yeah. If you've got a wager suggestion
somewhere, that video.
If you've got a wager suggestion, this is a good one. If you've got a wager suggestion, leave that in the comments, or let us know on some other. But post it to us. Post it to Max's house. He lives in Norbury, in Streatham, in South London, on the same road as Andy Zaltzman. I'm not going to dox you two any further than that. But if you
but thank you so much for going as far as you did.
If you can figure that out, you can get in touch with Max. But yeah, let us know. I think we should introduce more wagers. People make a lot of statements here, and we don't hold them to account. And I don't know. We just wasted 3 minutes of the show talking about that. But
it's 3 minutes less that we have to talk about England, because we don't need to question what lineup they're going to have. Go for it. Tell us.
They've named their team. They've named their team. Like, I think that. I like it that England do this. Like, it obviously doesn't make any sense, but I think that England naming their 11, it is good for creating a buzz and for helping us to do the podcast. And I think teams should be forced by the ICC to name their team 2 days in advance, because I think
they should be forced to name it ahead of whenever we're doing a preview show.
Yes, exactly.
Obviously, that means changing deadlines for all international cricket teams, because we never know when we're going to be doing the preview show, but it would be good, be helpful.
Right. Here we go. England, they've gone with the exact... I'll just read it out. It's the exact same team with Dawson. Crawley, Duckett, Pope, Root. I was going to say Rook. Brute and Rook. Yeah, that's what works. Stokes, Smith. They have named on their official sheet Liam Dawson at number 8, Max. Chris Wokes, Brian Cast, and Jofra Archer. 2 things sort of jump out there, don't they? I guess we'll start with Dawson, and then we'll move on to Crawley. Liam Dawson. Who is he? What is he? What's he going to do? Is it? How has this transpired that the man is back in from the cold?
It's quite a good question, Jack, because there's been enough years of Liam Dawson putting out very impressive numbers in the county championship, being player of the year for Hampshire in the last 2 seasons, I think it was. Like averaging 30 odd with the bat, taking stacks and stacks of wickets. England, in disarray with whoever they're picking as a spinner, going for guys who just happen to be tall. Jack Leach being, sick or injured as a left arm spinner, and then England not calling up Moeen Ali to bat at 3 to replace him, and all that weird stuff. And throughout all that time, Liam Dawson doesn't get a sniff. And now he's 35, and he's back in the England squad on the back of Harry Brook getting involved in some of the white ball stuff out from the cold. So it's a slightly odd one, isn't it? In the sense that, like, how many more years are you even going to get out of Liam Dawson, and the fact that in theory Jack Leach is England's second spinner and he is fit and available, and you're not bringing Dawson in because you need to fill some of the batting, because Shah Bashir was in the side being unable to hold the bat effectively, and England's batting lineup with Liam Dawson in it is obscene. They've got like 4 number 8s now. It's nonsense.
Yeah, like the Liam Dawson story is an interesting one. I think it's a good story that he's plugged away. He's finally going to get his chance, and he's come back in.
I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm happy for him because I think he 100% deserves to have played some more Test cricket for England.
But what I would say is I'm not absolutely sure what to expect. Like, occasionally you get there's sort of two ways to get into the England team, aren't there? There's like the we think you're going to be good, the Zach Crawley route, the Harry Brook route to some extent. Like, Harry Brook got picked basically off a few good matches. It was more than a few good matches. It was a good season. And then there's the like play county cricket for absolutely fucking ages, and then hopefully somebody takes notice of you eventually, which is maybe the Ben Duckett route into the team. And I don't think either of these are actually proven to like 100% of the time give you winners. Like, so I'm not going to stand here and say, like, thank God they picked Dawson. I think Ross is probably a bit more of a Liam Dawson buyer than I am. I think it's a sensible choice to pick him. He does look like maybe the best available option. It's probably a bit marginal between him and Jack Leach in terms of the bowling. Leach is probably a better bowler, I would venture, than Dawson. But obviously, with Dawson is very going to likely to be a capable number 8, so that sort of makes sense. I'm not going to stick my neck out and say that he's going to be amazing though. Like, I think if you look through like his Palme d'Or I've been watching a little bit of Tour de France, so we'll drop that one in there. Like, it isn't. I think what you would say was they were good numbers. Yeah, they're not necessarily the mark of somebody who I am thinking is going to come in and be an absolute sensation in Test cricket. Now, I'll just talk through that in a little bit more detail, because some people are going to look at them and be like, this is a guy with 10,000 first-class runs who averages 35, and a guy who has 400 poles, an average of 31. Like, why wouldn't he be sort of decent Test cricket? I think the sort of reasons I have for that, a lot of those runs are going to be scored fairly low down the order, and I think his batting has improved. So maybe he's been batting a little bit higher more recently, and there's evidence perhaps that his game has changed and he's more worthy of a Test spot now. Maybe that average is slightly false, and I should be a little bit more generous to him there. But I'm going to throw that out there as reason one. 10% of his innings ending not out. That's quite, it's not super high, but it's indicative of a guy who does bat lower down the order, right? Mm-hmm. And then from a wickets perspective, like an average of 31.5 is decent for a spinner in first class cricket in England. That's all right. But he's taken 371 wickets in 273 bowling innings. Now, to me, that says that is a player who mainly gets thrown the ball to hold an end up, or when conditions are really, really good. That's not an attacking spinner. And so I can actually see, if you take a look slightly below the surface level, why England have been a little bit reluctant to pick him. Then you throw in things like it's not complete hooey that you want a tall spin bowler. Like there's reasons why you might want that. And if you have a physical profile for what you want from your spinner in mind, and you want an attacking attacking wicket taking bowler, maybe you do look at Liam Dawson and you see that his sort of relatively low wickets to match ratio suggests that he isn't that player, and you think maybe I'm not going to pick him. So I'm trying to offer a little bit of balance on Dawson there, and just say to people, like, maybe watch your expectations a little bit. He's likely to probably be a guy who holds an end up and like probably doesn't pose absolutely loads of threat a lot of the time when he bowls. And he's likely to be a fairly capable batter who isn't Brian Lara. And that might be fine for a year or 2 years. But like, I don't think England have missed out on a generational talent, is what I'm saying.
I think it's maybe you could argue it's slightly unsexy as a pick, isn't it? It's just competent. He'll do a job, and I think probably the job that England kind of need is holding up an end, really, in the way they've been playing the series. Like Shahab Bashir has taken some wickets, mainly Rishabh Pant holding out on the boundary for whatever reason at whatever time, and I think Liam Dawson will fill a similar role in terms of being competent, trying to keep it tight, not letting India get away from the game, and then maybe he'll come into it a bit more in the fourth innings or third innings if the pitch does start to get a little bit drier, which is, I think, where he does excel when he plays for Hampshire, and it turns into a little bit of a dust bowl from time to time. So yeah, I mean, I'd probably agree. I think he's the kind of player who would have deserved a bit more of a crack based on, his ability or his performances at county cricket level, particularly in recent years. I think he's improved a lot, like you say, particularly on the batting side in recent years, but not necessarily because he's a generational talent so much as England's selection of spinners or availability of spinners since Graham Swan's retired has been fairly meagre. Like rocking around with Dom Bess, for example, that the entire time Dom Bess was playing cricket for England, you probably should have had someone like Liam Dawson instead. In hindsight, so I think maybe that's where he's been a bit unlucky, but I think it's fair for you to point out that, he's probably not going to come in and single-handedly rip a side to shreds based on the numbers that he has and the performances that he's had throughout his career. But it's not to say he's not a good cricketer and that he won't do a decent job in this side. But yeah, don't expect the world, I guess, is a fair assessment.
Yeah, it sounds a little bit harsh when you say it like that. I just to sort of like, I guess, explain sort of what I mean. If we're looking at Jack Leach as maybe the other option, in 100 fewer first-class matches, and bear in mind that Jack Leach has also played Test cricket, so his 40 Test matches are also thrown into his 160 first-class games. Leach has taken 527 wickets. Now, to me, that jumps out at a better average as well, by the way. To me, that jumps out as a bowler.
Probably helped by the fact that he actually got to play in Sri Lanka.
Look, it does. But like, that's not... He's played like 3 or 4 matches in Sri Lanka out of 160 matches. Most of his... 121 of his first-class games have happened in the county championship. And in that, he has a better record and he's taken wickets more frequently and he's bowled more overs. And like, I think there's maybe phases to Dawson's career where you'd say he's maybe more of a frontline bowler now than he was in the past, and so it's fair that England should pick him now. But I think it's also fair that England wouldn't have picked him in 2023. Like I think it's probably also fair to say that it's maybe a little bit of a stretch to expect him to like absolutely come in and be night and day ahead of Shoaib Bashir. Like, he might just be the same sort of bowler but with a bit more batting. Like that is a possibility. I expect him to be a little bit better, but I looked into it because I'm not a big Shoaib Bashir buyer. My initial instinct was like, oh great, we can bring in England could bring in a proper spin bowler now. And I'm thinking like perhaps England have genuine reservations that are correct about Dawson. I think it will be an interesting experiment. Well done to Dawson though for getting back into the squad. Max, who's going to win?
I feel like England hold the cards, partly because their batting is so deep, it's ridiculous. Like Bryden Cast at 10 is absolute nonsense, and I think that's going to be, especially if you consider, right, that we're playing with balls that are basically sponges. So the amount of time you get out of the new ball is about half what it would normally be in in England. So if England managed to, let's say England are 6 down and they've got through, or they're into the second new ball, and India managed to take another wicket or two, you're still bowling at Bryden Cast and someone, maybe Jamie Smith, maybe Chris Wokes, whoever. And if the ball goes a bit soft again and it's not doing anything, England could easily put on another 100 runs at that point, and it's going to be quite difficult, I think, to to get through that, especially if India are struggling with who to pick with the ball. And Slicer Dawson's coming back in. He did pretty poorly in his first attempts in the Test series. Karen Nair's not necessarily done it, so I think England probably on top, but like has been pointed out, there is a little bit of rain around, so that could bring things bring the draw back into play. We could see the lesser spotted draw. It's been hovering around the fringes this series, hasn't it? With threatening to rear its ugly head. It's not done so yet, but no, I think I would make England favourites, especially on the back of the win. Archer coming back in and seemingly looking fit and firing, and definitely being a point of difference from that England bowling lineup to what they had in the first couple of games as well. So yeah, England for me.
Yeah. If I was going to try and make a case for India in the draw, like I think for there to be a draw, even with a little bit of rain away, one of the teams has to be happy with the draw. If we look at where the two teams are in the series, like I think India maybe would be happy with the draw. Like if they were offered it now with the in quotes crisis of injuries, maybe they would say yes. But also if they're going to play Bumrah, and they're going to stick with. I think basically it's Bumrah's decision. I think it's his medical team, and he has made the decision that he wants to play 3 matches. If that decision sticks, they then go into the last match of the series. England might be able to strengthen. Mark Wood might be back. Atkinson might be back. It's like the two teams. It's England have tactically entered the
very
series
opposite
with all of their players injured. And now they're coming back. There's like hordes of bowlers all over the place. They're all fresh, trying to make a claim for the Ashes. And India, like it's people got there's
scrape him off the pavement.
There's no seats available on the flights back. Like it's they're having to send some of them by cargo ship. It's like no. So I don't know what we're saying there. I think for the draw to be on, one of the teams would have to be okay. Batting slow enough and allowing the draw to sort of drift into the match.
Jadeja we're playing.
I'm not sure. Yeah. I think it will be perhaps closer than we think, and I think like a big factor. And I've said this a lot across the series. I think a lot of this will come down to conditions and who bowls when, and whether we get uneven conditions or whether we get similar conditions. I think if we have a match where it's sort of gloomy and cloudy for all the days, I think that England will be better than India at exploiting those conditions over the 4 innings and will win. And similarly, I think if you get consistent good weather, and I'm not expecting that, it's Manchester, I think England probably will find a way to grind out the win there too. But if you get a scenario where you get cloud in the evening or cloud in the morning and India happen to be bowling at the top 5 at that time, it's really, really conceivable that they take 4 wickets for 70 and they deliver to bring us back to the beginning, a beat down session that can win it for India. Like it's not, in with the forecast expected, that'll happen 1 in 3 times, which is a decent chunk of match equity for an India team that some people will probably be quite pessimistic about, probably erroneously pessimistic about, I would say. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think we've seen a bit of that as well, haven't we, in the first couple of games where there were a few moments where, just the way it fell meant that some teams had the ball in the right circumstances. But we'll just have to wait and see, won't we? I think there's in the last 10 years or so as well, there's a bit of a bias towards the team batting first at Old Trafford. I think half the tests have been won by the team batting first, so that could be another element that comes into play. Whoever wins, if Shubman Gill can finally win a toss.
Yeah, that could come into play. I'd bowl first in this match.
Yeah,
that would be my decision. Yeah, we'll see what happens though. Do you want to make I'm going to make a wager, Max.
Right.
I will. After my anti Liam Dawson rant, I will write Liam Dawson and read Liam Dawson an apology on an episode of the cricket podcast in the future if he takes 4 wickets in the match. Actually, I was going to set a run line. If he takes 4 wickets in the match, any number of runs are allowed.
Really?
Is that a fair under over 3.5 wickets? Because I think expectations are high.
Yeah. Okay. 4 wickets in the match. Well, let's see. What did Shaib Bashir do in the previous game? He was one for 6,
3, I think.
and 1 for 59 in the
2.
third test. So 2. So yeah, okay. 3.5 at the wicket line. I think that's fair.
Okay, I'll do that. That's a fair. Yeah, we brought the wager back. Max, there's one last thing, and we haven't really got that much time to talk about it, but it is big news. Apparently, so there's 2 things. ICC have announced next 3 World Test Championships will all be in England, the home of cricket. Great decision, ICC.
Good news for us.
Let's hope that if England and India don't make it, that's a £50 day out at Lords. You can't beat that value. That's what we're all hoping for. India and England to crash and burn so that we get one good cheap day out at the Test a year, hopefully in the members and friends enclosure again with the cheap beer. And this year I won't lose my hat, although I did get my hat back. So
did you? Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I did get my hat back. The other thing is that talks have progressed apparently, Max, on promotion and relegation in the World Test Championship to expand the tournament out to 12 teams, to have a top division and a bottom division. I think that in theory that rationalizes the number of matches you play against different teams in a cycle to some extent. It means you play the teams in your division a little bit more frequently, which is what England, India and Australia obviously want. It's not so good for the bottom teams in the championship, which I think at the moment would be West Indies, Pakistan and Bangladesh. What are your general thoughts on promotion and relegation in Test matches?
Yeah, mixed, I think. Always depends on what obviously there's, you've got the primary concerns, I suppose, of the structure, what it means for the teams, who they're playing against, the competitiveness and the fairness, I suppose, of competition is one aspect. But then, you've got the secondary things about what is it trying to achieve and how is it the right way of going about achieving those things? So, I mean, on the one hand, right, like I'm not totally against it in the sense that things like watching West Indies being bowled out for 27, I mean, they're not much fun, right? Totally. I mean, you can look at it and it's funny when it happens, but then afterwards you think, well, it's not competitive. It's not really good for cricket for that. And I think there is the wider issue is that there's a big gap that needs to be bridged, partly due to money and the incentives that countries can offer to play Test cricket over focusing on franchise cricket. All these things that people are very aware of, and the question is whether does this bridge the gap? Right? I think competitiveness, it will probably improve because the better teams will be playing the better teams, and maybe for those in the second division, they've got something a bit more tangible to aim for in the immediate term. Right? If you've got like a World Test Championship, realistically, there's like 4 teams that could win it. If you're Sri Lanka or West Indies Like you're just sort of there. You're kind of just there, aren't you? Making up the numbers, and you're in this sort of limbo of like, how do you actually get back into the circuit? So maybe like being able to aim for a promotion into that upper tier of the World Test Championship does give you something a bit more from that aspect. But then you lose the games against the big sides, and maybe that's the revenue raisers. Maybe they're not revenue raisers if you lose in 3 days and you miss 2 days of Test cricket. But they're the kinds of things that I think play off against each other. So I think mainly whatever happens, it's important that any revenue is lost for those teams that are now not being able to have big ticket series against Australia and England and India and the rest of it, have that made up for by the ICC in whatever format. And I suppose the other thing is like it's a better pathway for the newer nations, which I think is good if you want to try and expand Test cricket. Ireland, Afghanistan, Zimbabwe, giving them an opportunity to play actual competitive cricket that could lead towards something is probably a good thing for them in terms of the wider number of countries playing Test cricket. So yeah, I mean it could work, right? It's not something where I'm going to sit here and be like, this is a terrible idea. I think there's a possibility of it being a positive thing. It just needs to be done correctly. It needs to be done with the right intentions and not becoming a super league for England, India and Australia to play each other all the time. And that's, where you feel, if you're being a bit cynical, or maybe you could just say realistic, the concerns are that it becomes just a little bit of a fun for the big boys and everyone else can pick up the scraps. And that's what absolutely needs to not happen. So it's, I'll reserve judgment until we know a bit more about what might happen. But in theory, don't hate it. Could be good. In practice, that's where the real proof will be, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think my sort of general take on this is that this obviously should happen. Like more context and better pathways into playing Test cricket for smaller nations, more matches in general, more competitive matches as well, makes loads and loads and loads of sense. Like that's a very good way of organising a sports competition, to have the teams of roughly equal level playing each other. And if you're a bit better than the level that you're playing at, to go up and play harder teams. And if you're a bit worse than the level you're playing at, to go down and play worse teams like that. We figured this out hundreds of years ago in most sports. Like, everything you said about the money side is absolutely spot on. Like it 100% should happen, but it can't happen unless you actually have a revenue sharing model that is effective and frankly much more generous to the smaller nations in that second division than it currently is. Like they need more money, lots more money than they're currently getting for the status quo. To move to this system where they would lose all of that money, or a large amount of that money, the status quo money, would be suicide for them. They will stop playing Test cricket. So you need to recompense them for that change and probably give them, probably address that. Probably give them more than they'd be missing out on. If you create a Super League, you will end up with 6 teams playing Test cricket pretty quickly,
if you're lucky.
Maybe 8. I don't think it would shrink that much. I think there will be. There's. I think lots of the players actually do want to play it, and I think just for that reason, just for the sake of competition, I think that it will continue. I think it could shrink quite a lot further for some of those, for Bangladesh, for Pakistan, even, right? Like it's for Sri Lanka. Like it's not a given that if they're definitely for West Indies, it's not a given that they'll just play it at play as regularly or try. Well, you know what I mean. Like, I don't think Test cricket is going away, basically, for even the smaller teams. Like Ireland aren't in the World Test Championship. They still try and get Test matches in. Zimbabwe are playing more Test matches than anyone this year. Like, if there's a will to play the game, which I believe that there is, even for the smaller nations, then they will find a way to play. Giving them context for that and allowing them to pay their players properly and putting that and creating a scenario where there is something on the line in those test matches is a great idea.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, like you actually have to pay them. Anyway,
Yep.
Max, we've done a little bit more than we expected. Should we wrap up the pod?
Let's do that.
Someone has mentioned, the Champions League T20 relaunch. Yeah, this is the other ICC plan, isn't it, to try and create basically a new franchise tournament to do a Champions League.
We are a bit short on franchise tournaments, so
yeah. Like, I'd say, in theory, a good idea, but be careful what you wish for. Like the Club World Championship or whatever the fuck it was called in football, I would say was an unmitigated disaster from a PR standpoint. It was won by Chelsea, which is, I'm afraid to say, Max,
best
obviously
team in
fast.
the world.
Nobody turned up to watch it. They were cutting the price of tickets by like 1,000% at certain points of the tournament to try and get anybody in to come and watch it. Like people around the world were laughing at it. The standard of play was pretty poor. Most of the big teams didn't care. Like blah 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 blah. It's yeah, I don't know. Look, we're done, Max. We're done.
We are.
Maybe we'll talk about that another time when the things. Well, we probably will when the plan actually comes to fruition.
But for now, it's Test cricket.